your CEU certificate. We suggest having your Zoom setting on speaker's view. We will be recording the presentation, so if you aren't comfortable being recorded and you aren't receiving CEUs, please keep your camera off during the speaker's presentation. We will be posting the recording of our E&I Speaker Series page on the E&I Speaker Series page a few days after the talk. All participants will be muted during the presentation. Please do not use the chat during the presentation, as that can be distracting for the speaker. Closed caption is available for this event. You can access closed captioning through Zoom. If joining by computer, click on the live transcript button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Once you click on live transcript, please then click enable to start the closed captioning. If you are joining by phone, go to settings, meetings, and then closed captions. Finally, it goes without saying that all comments in the chat should be respectful and mindful of our entire BUSSW community. We always begin with a land acknowledgement. Our land acknowledgement reminds us that colonialization is an enduring reality and that Boston University sits on the stolen lands of the Massachusetts people. If you're outside of Boston, please take some time to learn about the tribal lands where you live and the ongoing movements to have land honored, acknowledged, and returned. These past few years have been very challenging in so many ways, with COVID-19 unmasking the devastating long-term effects of racial capitalism and the ongoing consequences of classism, gender oppression, war, and a mental health crisis. The timing of Amy and Husain's talk couldn't be more appropriate for our historical moment when we, as social workers, part of our world community, stand at a crossroad. This E&I Speakers event will provide an inside look and an ongoing campaign in Boston to launch a non-police, non-carceral, community-based mental health crisis response. Two of the campaign's organizers, Husain Rizvi and Amy Takinami, who is a graduate of our School of Social Work, will discuss the history of the campaign within the greater context of the abolition movement in Boston. They will share details about the proposed non-police, non-carceral, community-based model they are working on, as well as the current status of the campaign, and finally, how social workers and others in the greater Boston area can get involved. I'm delighted to introduce our speakers. Husain Rizvi, they, them, is the Director for Pathways to Change program and the co-director for the Summer Leadership Program at the City School, a youth organizing and leadership development organization that focuses on supporting Black and Brown working class youth in Boston by developing young people's leadership through popular education, collective care, and transformative justice, political education, and organizing 101. They are a steering committee member of the Mental Health Crisis Response Campaign, where they support young people organizing. Amy Takinami is the Racial Justice Policy and Community Engagement Manager at FXB Center for Health and Human Rights at Harvard University. Is a macro social worker, a graduate of our program, and a community organizer. She is committed to building and fostering grassroots power towards community-led social change. She is a steering committee member of the Boston Liberation Health Group, a group of social workers dedicated to understanding and practicing social work using the Liberation Health Framework, which is a model of radical mental health practice that helps individuals identify and analyze the socio-political factors affecting our lives and take action to change our external world. I think somebody needs to mute themselves. Yeah. Through her work with Boston Liberation Health and in partnership with the City School, She also serves as a steering committee member of Boston Mental Health Crisis Response Campaign, organizing for non-police, non-carceral, community-based mental health care crisis response for the city of Boston. I've worked with both of them on a number of projects, and I know we are in for an engaging learning opportunity tonight. Please join me in welcoming our wonderful colleagues and comrades in the struggle for a justice-focused mental health crisis response, Amy Takinami and Husain Rizvi.
Thanks, Dawn. Thanks, Dawn, for the introduction, and to the E&I committee for hosting us for this conversation tonight. As Dawn mentioned, my name is Amy Takinami. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm here tonight in my role as a steering committee member of the Mental Health Crisis Response Campaign. And I'm going to take us through the first half of our presentation before handing it off to my comrade, Husain, who's going to lead us through the second half. And as a fellow social worker, and as Dawn mentioned, an alum of the BU School Social Work program, I'm particularly thrilled to share this space with all of you because there's such a crucial role for abolitionist social workers and other social service workers to play in both the local and the national movement for non-police crisis response. So thank you all for being here, and please be sure to stay through the very end of our presentation for tangible opportunities to plug into our current campaign. Next slide, please. Great. And to give you all a sense of how we're going to use the next 30 minutes, I'm going to start off with a brief history of the campaign and the greater social movement that offered us the opportunity to design and develop a model for responding to mental health crises without police that we are now advocating and organizing for. And then next, I'm going to give a brief overview of the actual model itself, from the scope of response, the dispatch, operations, staffing, to where we hope to situate the model and where we are demanding funding for the model come from as well. And then finally, I'm going to hand it over to Husain, who's going to walk us through both the history and the current struggle organizing for fully funding a pilot of our mental health crisis response. Next slide, please. So to begin, I'm going to offer a brief history of the campaign itself, so folks have a better understanding and insight around what led to the social political conditions that allowed us to design and propose a mental health crisis response that doesn't involve law enforcement right here in Boston. And we want to highlight that this didn't just happen out of nowhere by chance or by luck, and actually acknowledge the organizers and the social movements that they have built that have paved the way for us. Next slide. And Lindsay, do you mind making it presenter mode so that folks can see it full screen if possible? I think you have it on presenter mode so folks can see the notes section, but there should be, I don't know if anyone else has better expertise on what button to click here.
Let me figure this out real quick.
At the bottom next to next to that slider, yeah.
Well, that's what I pushed.
Oh.
Okay. I got you.
Okay. I'm going to keep rolling, but I think we'll stay on this slide for a little bit. Oh, perfect. This is perfect. Thank you so much. Great. So I want to start off by acknowledging that even before any of the dates that you see on this slide, actually, organizers and activists have been fighting for alternative mental health crisis responses as part of a much longer history of the fight for community-based mental health care for many, many years. So some examples: the Black Panther Party provided a people's free ambulance service, which provided free rapid transportation for sick and injured people. Similarly, the Young Lords worked with the Health Revolutionary Unit movement in New York City to provide free door-to-door medical care in collaboration with progressive nurses, medical technicians, doctors. So we are very proud and honored to be part of this radical lineage of revolutionary health justice organizers, and we've benefited greatly from their work and their shared vision for community-based mental health care that they set out for us. But we also know that, unfortunately, and I think some folks in this E&I series have spoken to this much more in depth, on the other hand, there has also always been an oppressive arm and history of health workers and social workers in particular. a history in which our profession has been used and weaponized to corroborate with and uphold the police state and carceral practices. And this darker history is part of why it is so important for social workers to align ourselves not with professionalization and policing, but with our clients, their families, and our shared communities in a broader, more interdisciplinary movement for health justice and liberation. So to take us back to this slide, in Boston in 2020, people joined in the national mass Black Lives Matter actions, which were triggered by the police murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, many other Black lives that were cut short at the hands of the police. And the local demand here in Boston, led by the Defund Boss Cops Coalition, included defunding the Boston Police Department and reinvesting that money into our communities, including funding for youth jobs, affordable housing, participatory budgeting. And I just want to shout out some of the incredible groups and organizations that make up Defund Boss Cops. So that includes Youth Justice and Power Union, Muslim Justice League, Asian American Resource Workshop, Boston Immigration Justice Accompaniment Network, Families for Justice is Healing, and many more. So during this time in 2020, the concept of abolition really moved to the mainstream, due in part to the work of abolitionist organizers who had been organizing long before 2020, but saw this moment as a unique window of opportunity to seize the public discourse. And to quote Ruth Wilson Gilmore, who's an abolitionist scholar, abolition is actually about presence just as much as it is about absence. So these demands to defund the police and reinvest in life-affirming institutions were part of an abolitionist vision for our city. And part of that vision that organizers were fighting for was for the creation and funding of a non-police, community-based mental health crisis response. That's where we come in. And I want to note that as social workers and mental health service users ourselves, I'm sure that many of us here in this Zoom room have seen or experienced firsthand the devastating consequences of police involvement, particularly in mental health crises, where we know and we have seen police often escalate crises, particularly for our historically most marginalized communities, such as BIPOC folk, queer and trans folk, and disabled folks. And also the stats support our collective experiences as well. So a person with an unmet mental health need is 16 times more likely to be killed by the police. And this is relevant to Boston, unfortunately. There are many examples of this harm that police cause during crisis. Most recently, about a month ago, the city of Boston settled in a wrongful death lawsuit, agreed to pay $4.6 million for the police killing of Terrence Coleman, who was experiencing a mental health crisis in 2016 here in the city. And unfortunately, there have been other police murders of folks experiencing mental health crises in the greater Boston area since then as well. So to take us to spring 2021, the second bullet point here on this timeline, due to the deep organizing by the Defund Boss Cops Coalition that laid the groundwork for the upsurge in activism in 2020, Mayor Kim Janey's administration earmarked $1.7 million for the development of a community proposal for what a non-police mental health crisis response for Boston could look like in her 2021 budget. And again, I just want to emphasize this initiative was due to the political pressure that organizers built over years and years of deep organizing. Did not come from the top down. And in April 2021, Boston put out a request for proposals, or an RFP, for organizations to facilitate a community-led design group process to propose this new model for the city. I'm going to note here that this RFP was part of a three-pronged initiative approach to revamping mental health crises response in the city of Boston. And those two other approaches were expanding the Boston Police Department's co-response with mental health providers from the BEST team. And the second was establishing a joint EMT and social worker program. And I want to be clear that our model is very distinct and different from these two other approaches for a couple of reasons. One is that co-response models still include the police. So for folks who are unfamiliar, co-response is when social workers and police respond to crises. And hence, police are there. They are still escalating crises for various reasons, including folks experiencing crises, perceiving the mere presence of police as a threat. It also reinforces the idea that people in distress are potentially criminal or dangerous, doesn't address the high and negative impact of police presence in Black and Brown communities. And in regard to the EMT social worker path, they are both also mandated reporters, which I'll get into a little bit more later on in the presentation, but essentially meaning that they can trigger a carceral response, including police involvement. So all to say, this RFP, the one that was put out, was specifically around a third and distinct prong to design a non-police community-based response. And back to the timeline, in January 2022, the City School and Boston Liberation Health were selected as the organizational leads to facilitate this community-led design process. And just quickly a bit about our two groups, the City School, where Husain works, is a youth social justice leadership development organization that's been based in Boston for nearly 3 decades. And the Liberation Health Group, where I serve on the steering committee, has been around for 2 decades, organizes social workers, healthcare workers, and service users toward health justice. And both abolitionist organizations dedicated to fostering genuine public health and safety and healing. We were thrilled to participate in this community-led process. And the City of Boston also selected 14 members of the community-led design group who all had lived and professional experience with mental health crises. And over the course of 9 months, our whole team organized a series of data-driven planning sessions, followed by an intensive retreat. We held a set of community listening sessions where over 200 community members participated. And an initial draft of the model that was designed was refined through the listening sessions, and the team finally developed a final report, which was submitted to the City of Boston in December of 2022. Next slide, please. Okay, so next I'm going to dive into some of the details about the model, which were developed through the collective work of the community-led design group, which included feedback, again, from the community listening sessions, the data that they collected and reviewed together, interviews that they held from sites across the country who are currently implementing community-led mental health response models, as well as one-to-ones with Boston area providers and peer-to-peer youth surveys as well. Next slide, please. So here are some key aspects of the model itself. One of the first questions we had to answer was, what were the actual situations that the local community feels are the highest need right now for a non-police response? So the scope of response was determined, and some of the following you can see in the top left box were the incidents that the community felt would be best handled by a non-police response right now. So things like someone having a mental health crisis, sick visits and wellness checks, safety or health concerns related to substance overuse, gender-related or intimate partner violence, transportation related to a mental health crisis, and more. So once we determined when a non-police response was most appropriate, we then explored the process of actually contacting and sending out responders. And we ultimately recommended that the response be accessible 24/7 across all neighborhoods in the city and by multiple means. So through an independent 3-digit number, diversion from 911 and 988, and through social media. And then it became evident that the response would be most effective with staff responders that reflected the community in which they were responding, and with lived experience of mental health crises. So BIPOC folk, linguistically diverse people, people with different abilities. And one key staffing need that emerged over time was the demand to actually not include clinicians on the response team. So this was a key component to ensuring not just a non-police response, but a truly non-carceral response as well, in reference to the fact that clinicians are mandated reporters who end up, again, intentionally or not, triggering a carceral response through the involvement of DCF or the police. And folks who are not familiar, mandated reporting includes a set of policies, practices, state-based laws that require certain people, usually social workers and other healthcare workers, to report specific harms to government agencies. And it's been shown through many studies that it tends to make things worse. It decreases connection and trust. It increases people's interactions with the police, often ending in criminalizing people who were seeking support in the first place, and then ultimately deterring people from reaching out for help in the future. Additionally, community members that we surveyed noted the history of harm enacted by clinicians in communities of color in particular, and the impact that history of harm continues to have in their day-to-day lives. And with that said, though, clinicians won't be totally absent from the model. Our team also discussed including them to offer support and supervision to responders, as well as potentially serve as referrals as needed to folks. And also, I do want to note that not having clinicians as responders does not by any means mean that our responders are not going to be trained. Quite the opposite. Our team proposed that our staff be extensively trained in a wide range of relevant skills and practices. Some of those include EMT training, first aid, street medic, and CPR training, training on offering trauma-informed care, de-escalation, conflict resolution, and mediation training, domestic and gender-based violence response and survivor support training, and training on racial, economic, gender, queer, and disability justice. Next slide, please. Finally, one of the key questions about the model that was extensively discussed and debated was where it should stand in relation to the state. And ultimately, we recommended that the model be situated in a public agency, such as the Boston Public Health Commission, for example. And while this may be surprising to some, I want to share some reasons for this, which included a guarantee of well-paying unionized positions with city benefits for our response team members, and also a higher likelihood of sustainability as a public program. As we know, so much of the work that nonprofits and other community-based organizations end up kind of being forced to take on include extensive time and labor around fundraising and ensuring fiscal and workforce sustainability of the organization. So in this way, our hope is to carve out funding from the city budget annually to ensure less turnover and more sustainability. With that said, given obviously the inextricable relationship between the state and systems of policing that I talked about earlier, we made sure that this would also require the creation of a community oversight and accountability board that would be selected by the community and empowered with decision-making that would guide the direction and implementation of the entire program, including decisions related to staffing, operations, dispatch, and the board would have hiring authority over the program's leadership as well. So again, not just a performative community advisory board that folks might be familiar with, but really a true oversight and accountability board that would have the power to hold the public agency accountable to the community. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, we demanded that funding for this model be allocated from the police budget to another city agency. And again, this is another reason why we thought it was strategic to house our program in the city to help address the bloated police budget, as well as to address the fact that police are often at the root of the harm and violence that our communities face, and especially our historically most marginalized communities. So removing their scope and power in and of itself is a harm reduction strategy to keep our community safer. And this has been made explicitly clear in the past 24 hours right here in Boston, as we have watched our city actively deploy the police on peaceful student protesters at Emerson College and at Northeastern, who were bravely taking a stand and fighting for an end to the genocide in Gaza and their school's complicity in that. So I just want to give a quick shout out to all of those very brave and principled student organizers here in Boston, in Cambridge, in Medford, and across the country who are not only fighting for a more just, safe, healthy, and equitable world, but are also actively practicing alternatives for care and healing in the beautiful liberated zones that they've built and fostered on their respective campuses, and are really proving that we, like community, keep us safe. So next, I'm going to hand it over to Husain to walk us through what organizing for our pilot of our model has looked like over the past couple of years.
Thank you so much, Amy, for taking us through the history and details of the model specifically. As you just said, I'm going to take us through an overview of how the first 2 years of organizing have gone for this campaign, specifically the organizing done for a pilot of the model that Amy just explained for us. Next slide, please. Thank you. Our demand was focused on implementing a pilot in 2 neighborhoods of Boston in the hopes that with implementation of a more scoped version of the model, we'd then be able to sustainably grow that to include all of Boston. For this pilot, we demanded a non-police, non-carceral, community-based mental health crisis response for Boston that is free to use, divested from the police budget, and fully funded for $2.6 million. For the first demand, I mean, it feels straightforward to know that for a mental health crisis response to be an actually accessible public good that is for the people, it needs to be free. We cannot have economic barriers to our own community mental health care. For the second demand, as Amy said earlier, if we were to situate the model in the city, it was a non-negotiable for us to redirect the money that was being funneled into carceral and policing systems in Boston. We wanted our model to change the structures of power within the city to reinvest in community care and community-led safety instead of these violent systems that are built to isolate us from each other. And finally, for our third demand, we needed our pilot to be fully funded for the amount outlined in the report. Already, it's a conservative estimate about the amount of money that would be enough to create a sustainably running and flourishing response for 2 neighborhoods. And if we believe in reinvesting in community, we need to resource it. Thank you. Can I get the next slide? Thanks. For our first year of organizing, which was like 2022 to 2023, we focused on one of the 2 main paths. One of them was engaging power or engaging elected officials to garner support for the pilot. So for city councilor engagement, we worked with 2 city councilors, particularly that we built relationships with, to include an amendment in the FY 2024 budget for our pilot. We also mobilized people from Boston Liberation Health, the city school, and others in our networks and circles to go to various Ways and Means Committee budget hearings to emphasize the importance of including this in the budget. For those of you that might not know as much about the City of Boston budget cycle, they have these hearings that are held by the Ways and Means Committee. And each of these hearings would have their own theme, for example, education, public safety, public health. And we were kind of realizing we were trying to think about which ones to go to, but we were realizing that our response would affect so many different groups of people and would kind of address gaps and in a lot of different systems that it made sense for us to go to the one about education, for example. And with education, the connection was that, especially as youth workers and as a youth-centered campaign, we can see that young people do not get enough mental health resources and support through the school systems. The effect and the reach of the school to prison pipeline is well documented, and we saw our response as another option for young people to be able to receive mental health crisis support without being criminalized and policed. For public safety and public health, the connections were more obvious. We believe that community safety, to fund it, it shouldn't be going towards reforming the police to be more present in neighborhoods, but rather to fund responses that were designed and staffed by the community. As for the mayor, we shared the report with her that was generated through that process that Amy took us through in fall 2022. We were able to meet with her in May 2023, where she expressed she was not interested in approving our budget amendment. So then we continued to go to 2 of her coffee hours, which were like neighborhood events she does every year to meet with residents and city officials, just to continue approaching her with the pilot and organizing for the model and pushing back. Can I get the next slide? Thank you. The other path we were undertaking in this first year was more action and outreach. The goals of our direct actions and outreach were to engage young people and adults who were involved in the campaign, not only to have their own experiences pushing back against city officials, but also to be challenged to have to name for themselves and to other people, why is this campaign important to you? How can you see yourself as being part of this abolitionist vision of community care in Boston? Our first action was in April 2023 at one of the budget hearings. It was a testimony action. We brought about 80 community members, 40 of which testified, to be able to name, like I said before, why they wanted this budget amendment included for that year. We had 3 workshops before this action, leading up and like prepping young people and adults who came for this testimony. And I think it was definitely a very transformative experience for me to see young people, youth workers, social workers all come to these workshops and be a little nervous about testifying at City Hall. And then as people were going up, the people who were coming after them were getting more and more sort of courageous and emboldened to be like, I actually got this. And I know that I've prepped my testimony and I'm ready to step up and speak my power. We were able also after that testimony action to get meetings with 2 city councilors after this action and to get the amendment officially submitted for a vote. The next action we had was in May 2023. It was a sit-in. YGPU, or the Youth Justice and Power Union, is a partner youth organization. Their focus was on abolitionist organizing, and they had also been trying to defund the police in order to get more funding for youth jobs, affordable housing, and participatory budgeting, as well as the mental health crisis response. So being able to join with them in a sit-in where we literally were just sitting in on City Hall and demanding to talk to a counselor or be able to share our report and share the demands that we had, with young people being able to stand up and speak during that sit-in was, I think, a really beautiful example of what coalition organizing looked like, that there was all this beautiful history Amy was talking about in 2020 of the Defund Boss Cops Coalition coming with this focus on abolitionist organizing, and that our young people were able to meet together and organize together was amazing. Outreach and surveying, like I said, was opportunities for us as youth workers and other organizers to practice getting the word out about the campaign, building power, naming why this was important to us. We didn't want to just engage elected officials. We wanted to build connections and relationships with community through the organizing that we were doing. Can I get the next slide, please? Thank you. Overall, our key learnings of the first year were that we found that action and engaging power were really exciting and amazing ways to build power and push people to action. But we also wanted to create a more participatory democratic structure for the campaign to be sustainable and member-driven moving forward. So currently we're working on more of a base building approach, and we're trying to develop a member base and doing member development to be able to create a structure where members will be supported to take leadership in decision making for the campaign. So this has looked like one-to-ones in recruitment. We had a full day where young people were interviewing potential members and really connecting and making those one-to-one relationships around like, what bothers you about the carceral systems that are around you? What bothers you about policing? What do you want to see in a mental health, in your ideal mental health care crisis response? We also started doing biweekly member meetings. And at these meetings, we were doing things like member development, which could be through practicing outreach, naming the resources we had in the room as a group full of organizers, young people, social workers, social work students, interns. And also practice power mapping, being able to name like, what's the layout of the city that we have at this moment, and why is it important for us to be able to know like, who's your city councilor, who's part of the administration for BPS, et cetera, et cetera. Thank you. Perfect. So we also wanted to continue to do outreach with members and for members. A notable example that I want to talk about here was youth outreaching at the Boston Teachers Union meeting in January. I think it can be incredibly daunting as a young person to advocate for yourself in a school context. And I could see that young people and youth workers in that meeting were kind of like stepping into their power and pushing themselves to tell the adults that they see working at their schools every day that if you care about me holistically, then you will support this opportunity for me to receive non-carceral care. And I don't know, there was this quote, I'm at a training and someone, one of the facilitators was saying, like, you can let the work transform you. And that felt like one of those moments where it was like, okay, we've talked about struggling to advocate for ourselves in schools for the entire year. What does it mean to go up to a teacher and put this flyer in their face and be like, do you care about this as much as I do? Yeah. As for city government engagement, we've also been really excited to be in a process with members to determine the budget strategy through these meetings bi-weekly that are happening currently. So if you want to be part of that process, come to member meetings. My quick plug. Next slide, please. Okay, amazing. Thank you all so much for joining us today and for y'all's curiosity and interest around this crucial abolitionist visioning for mental health crisis response in Boston. Before we transition over to the questions, we just wanted to include a couple of ways that y'all could get involved. If you're interested in being a member of the campaign, like I said, we have bi-weekly meetings. And the only requirements to attend those is that you're a resident of Boston, you are a part of communities that are directly impacted by policing, and or you have lived or professional experiences with mental health. We also have a QR code here with the petition and links to knowing more about the model and the report if you all are interested in reading up. Yeah, thanks, Amy, for plugging that in the chat. Thank you so much.
Wow, incredible. That is what such an incredible presentation, and thank you both so much. I'm super excited to introduce our first reflector, Mateo Montero Murillo. Mateo is a first-year Masters of Social Work student in the clinical track here, aiming to work with BIPOC queer youth and young adults. His experience as an artist, a trans detribalized Mexican, an anarchist, and now as a social worker led him on a continuous journey of learning everything and anything about anti-carceral practice. He hopes to combine art, music, and community into his practice, knowing that living well cannot be done without collective struggle.
Thank you so much. I have so many thoughts. I'm gonna try to keep it to 1 minute, because I only have 1 minute. I'm coming at this from the perspective of a student who's coming from a non-clinical background, diving headfirst into social work, being like, this sounds cool. You spoke a lot about presence, abolitionism. So much of that resonates so deeply with me as information that's so critically valuable, especially as a BIPOC student within PWI institutions and very white curriculums. I guess my question is aligned how this knowledge and this road toward non-carceral practice, at the risk of legitimizing it within institutions, because that also has its, crazy tension of we don't want this to be co-opted within institutions. But has there ever been any conversations about how to bring this knowledge, this practice, information into the curriculum? I mean, I see my fellow students every day, they're like, the systems, what do we do about the systems? I see the worry in their faces, but these alternatives are so critical to our knowledge and just building up those possibilities. So I'd really love to know if that tension or even those possibilities have been explored within conversations within your groups.
I can jump in, and then Husain, feel free to jump in. I think to your point about like co-option, one piece we didn't touch on tonight is that we are really hoping, so we talked a lot about the model that we're fighting for, that we're hoping will land in the city. We also are hoping, like, parallel, that the organizing towards this response in and of itself, and the response implementation itself, also will allow for the growth of abolitionist practices and institutions outside of just the city program that we're fighting for. So I want to, uplift and acknowledge that many of us, maybe in this room, definitely all of us in the campaign, are already practicing alternatives to policing, right? When we knock on our neighbors' doors to get to know them and exchange numbers, through mutual aid networks, through making safety plans. So we really our campaign really hopes to kind of skill up and level up and support all of these practices that are already existing through trainings, not just for our responders, but for all community members. So we hope that that is part of the programming that the program has to offer. And again, to make our current systems, institutions, and practices of policing obsolete, which is Angela Davis's words, like, how do we make prisons and policing obsolete? It's by building up and investing in these life-affirming institutions and practices that, again, some of us are already practicing, just don't have resources to be able to sustain and support. So we really hope to resource and support individual practices, but also groups and organizations that are already practicing non-police responses across the city, and build and just be part of the larger ecosystem of care and healing that we're hoping to foster within the greater Boston area as well. So I don't know if that answered the question, but something we didn't touch on and wanted to make sure we uplifted. Husain, do you have anything to add to that?
The brief thing I have to add to this, I guess I have never had experience in a master's of social work like context, but I know at least in curriculum design for youth work that we've been doing is this question comes up a lot, right? Like, we have critiques for the system, critiques on critiques, but it can feel really daunting to ask people to reimagine, like, okay, what then what? what are we supposed to do if we don't have the system? And even if we hate it, some like people feel like I don't even know who I would call in in these situations. So in youth work, it's been easier to kind of break it down to be like, okay, what harm, and of course there's a lot of framing around this, but like what harm might you have come up in your life recently? Why is this harm happening? Who do you actually turn to when that, whether it's gendered harm, if you're a queer or trans person being like pushed out of your housing, like who are the systems of support you actually rely on in these situations? And what is their response? Like, how do they talk to you? How do they treat you in those like interactions? And through those like small moments, we're able to be like, okay, now let's build out from that. What would it look like if that was a group of people working at an like organization or working at this city? Like, what would that look like?
Thank you both so much. Great responses. I think we're going to move to our next reflector, Dr. Leila Carr, who's a full-time lecturer at our School of Social Work, where she teaches a number of courses, including racial justice and cultural oppression. She is dedicated to cultivating spaces in which emerging social workers are prepared to become agents of change through anti-oppressive approaches and an emphasis on social justice. A school social worker by training, her experience working with Muslim and Arab American children, youth, families, and communities stimulated her research, which explores the intersectionality of race, ethnicity, culture, religion, and values influencing identity development and negotiation.
Hi, everyone. I'm Leila Khair. Thank you both, Amy and Husain, for your thorough overview, as well as running us through like the history that brought us to this point. And also, I really appreciated your response to Mateo's question, because it was very similar to the question I had, which I was not surprising. But as Don shared, I am a lecturer at BUSSW, and we spend a lot of time in my classes discussing abolitionist strategies, thinking through what community care looks like, really talking about, harm, like Husain mentioned, kind of like building out from the harm, and really trying to do that imagining piece, which can be hard as a student who is now taking in lots of information and preparing to enter a field that is part of the carceral systems as well. And so many of my students still leave these conversations wanting to know what more they can do, both as social work interns, so at the agencies that they're currently placed at, and as future social workers. What can they do to support and take, like what roles can they take in amplifying the need for community care, and or sort of, this is maybe coming from my like school social work background of like how can they also support the youth, and like again continuing this work.
Amy, would you like to speak to the social work part, and then I'll speak to the like youth relationship part?
Sure. And this, I feel like there was a part of Mateo, your question around like curriculum too. So I'm going to try to tie a little bit of those pieces together. But as I mentioned in my kind of history piece, the fact that social workers have had this like complicated history, right, and contemporary role in our movements for social justice, that they've had and continue to play kind of an oppressive role, right, as arms of the carceral and policing state, as mandated reporters I talked quite a bit about, but also as proponents of the family policing system. But they've also always been and continue at the same time to play a role in genuine solidarity with our movements for justice and liberation. So I also want to uplift a couple other like examples within history that I didn't talk about, where social workers played a role in genuine solidarity. So there was a rank and file movement that challenged the professionalization of social work during the Great Depression. There was a national welfare rights organization and the social welfare workers movement in the 60s. So for us, like, this campaign offers, I think, one opportunity for social workers to plug in and join kind of this more disciplinary, multiracial, working class movement for health justice and liberation. But we also name many other abolition struggles happening right now here in Boston. Some of them, might be potential placements for students. But I think all of this history, the dual histories, deserve to be in our curriculums of social work school. I think they should be mandatory. And as a liberation health practitioner, I have to say, it's part of rescuing the historical memory of change, right? That we're not starting anew. We are all part of a lineage, and it's kind of like we actively have the agency to decide and choose how we want to engage and which arm of the profession we want to engage in. So there's definitely a lot we can embed into the curriculum, but I do think field placements are one place where students can practice some of this work too. Husain, you want to speak to the youth engagement piece?
Sure. Yeah, I think I was thinking about this. It can feel challenging sometimes also because student involvement can feel like transitory. Like if you're only in Boston for a certain amount of time and then you're actually leaving the city, like it can feel like heartbreaking to make deep relationship with people who like might not be able to stay, but it still feels valuable to be like, okay, mobilize with community members. Are there direct actions happening? The encampments that are happening right now, like how can you support them? Are there workshops being held? Are there other resources that you have access to, whether it's like financial resources or political resources of alumni of your school who are in positions of power that you can help mobilize and outreach to and talk to about pushing for some of these campaigns. I think also in working with young people, there's this thing that I feel like I have seen come up where sometimes it's like we feel like, oh, supporting young people just means like helping them meet their basic needs, and then like this is the baseline and that feels great. But I think in our organization, it's also been a lot about how can we challenge the way you've internalized adultism? Like if there are adults around you in your life that are telling you you don't deserve access to this kind of care, you're being dramatic, etc. What does it mean to support young people to be able to detangle that adultism along with all the other systems that they're going up against, to be able to feel affirmed in the needs that they have and speaking those out?
Thank you both. We have time for about 2 or 3 questions, and I see people have put a bunch of questions in the chat. I'll try to get to some of them. The first question we have is, what have you both found to be the most challenging part of the organizing work you have done, and how have you overcome or worked through the problems?
I think for me, I think it's been, and something that I've struggled with myself has been like the transition from being able to be in a space, a popular education space where we're learning together about the issue, sharing experiences, then feeling really safe and comfortable to share experiences, but then having to do that with people we don't necessarily know in an effort to shift power, whether that's at testimonies or when doing outreach. Like it can feel really daunting. Like you can have, bodily reactions, your heart starts beating faster, and I think for young people, adults, youth workers, a lot of the people that I've worked with, that can feel like a really difficult transition to be like, well, who would I even outreach to? Like, I don't even know anybody. And I think a lot of organizing work has been also about reminding people that they have community connections. Like you have people that love you and care deeply about you, and it's you're not actually as alone as you feel you are. And in the process of outreaching and speaking to action, it's like building not just power as a community, but building individual power to be able to do those parts of the work.
Yeah, and this is maybe a little similar to Sun's point, but I think, there's so many challenges. So I'm trying to pick one. And maybe the most obvious challenge has been, the engaging power piece that Husain spoke to, and working with the city, the mayor, the councilors. And I think, last year, really having the realization after our year of reflection in year one that the political will was not there, right? There's this realization, and it's both maybe a challenge and a hopeful realization that we were not going to be able to rely on this model coming from the top down, and that we were really going to need to build true grassroots power to make this possible. Hence, as Husain shared, really shifting our focus towards base building and building enough people power to make it politically impossible for city leadership not to support this model. And, we are going to continue engaging with the city and the mayor in one way, shape, or form this budget season and beyond, just because, again, I want to reiterate that we think it's crucial that it be housed in the city. We think it's crucial that the city take this on for the health and safety of the Boston community. And, this is urgent for some, right? There are people who are currently being harmed by the role of police in our current mental health crisis response. So we are excited to see what year 2 of organizing in the FY25 budget will look like.
Thank you both. And the next question is, what is the process for when an individual contacts your group experiencing a mental health crisis? I mean, I imagine if the question is if the pilot was in place, right? So if the pilot was working, right? What is the process for when an individual contacts your group experiencing a mental health crisis, for example, at risk of harming themselves or someone else? Has the planning gone this far?
Yeah, so if I'm hearing the question correctly, we definitely, I mean, there's one question around like the dispatch process, but I'm hearing a question, right, around responder safety. And this is a question we get a lot, so I want to respond. I think there are a number of ways to think about this. I think just to start, I want to acknowledge that police have kind of an automated way of labeling people and things, especially our historically most marginalized communities, BIPOC folk, visibly trans and queer folk, disabled people, as just inherently unsafe and dangerous and criminal. And by virtue of their mere presence as armed responders, just tend to escalate harm more than de-escalate. And some of this has been studied. And, folks experiencing mental health crises are stigmatized not just by the police, but by others on the street who might, see them and call 911 as violent, including this assumption that they are unsafe to others, when in reality, I think many of us know as clinicians that they are most likely to hurt themselves more than they are to hurt others. Mental health crises are usually the least safe for the people who are experiencing the crises. With that said, we would respect the autonomy and choice for responders to remove themselves if a situation isn't safe. That is part of our commitment to a fully consensual model. And I just also want to note that we still, at any point, would not divert a call back to 911 as responders. Folks can make a personal decision to call 911 on their own, and sometimes that'll be out of our control, right? Folks on the street might be calling 911 to the same crisis, but to maintain that our model is fully non-police and fully non-carceral, we would not be diverting. And again, that is because we believe that police tend to escalate and cause more harm. And, this response to this question, as well as some other, challenging questions, I want to note that there is still a lot to flesh out with a community advisory board that we are excited about continuing to flesh out, hence why we wanted a pilot. There will be questions that come up that we had not probably even anticipated, and we want to make sure those questions are answered by folks who would be most impacted by this model. So again, folks who have had lived personal and professional experience with mental health crises, and in particular with the role of police in mental health crises. So also say we don't have the answers to all of the questions just yet, and nor should we, because this model has yet to be, practiced. And we believe in praxis and the idea of getting out there, doing and reflecting collectively together.
Son, did you want to add anything?
No, I think Amy approved. Yeah, I was like trying to think of what to add, and I was like, wow, he's hitting all the points.
You both did, man. Okay, there are so many more questions in the chat, and it'd be great to be able to answer them, but it is 6:30, believe it or not. So we're going to have to sort of wrap up. We want to thank everyone for coming. Our amazing speakers, Husain and Amy, our insightful reflectors, Mateo and Layla, and finally, our amazing behind-the-scenes tech support for the evening, Lindsay. We want to say that we miss our student RAs this evening. They are all on strike, as part of the Graduate Student Workers Union, and we stand in solidarity with them. Lindsay will now paste the link to the CEU evaluation and quiz. Please note, you will need to access the link at this time. So please don't email us in 2 weeks. Get the link now. We are not permitted to email you this link at a later date. So please make sure that you can successfully access it now. Okay, we will keep the Zoom room open for another minute to ensure that everyone has time to access the link. Okay, if you cannot access the link, let Lindsay know if you're having trouble accessing the link. Again, it will take up to 4 weeks for you to receive your CEU certificate. And so we'll spend a little time doing that. In about 2 or 3 minutes, we will begin to remove any remaining participants from the Zoom room. Not that we don't want to hang out with you and have a good time, but we do need a little space for the organizers to debrief. So in this movement, we say that the path to justice is more of a marathon, and that's not a sprint. So please take good care of yourselves, everyone, because we need all of you to create the new world that we all deserve. This concludes our 2023 and 2024 speaker series. Have a wonderful summer, everyone. Take good care, and we look forward to seeing you in the fall. Okay, hopefully everyone has accessed the link. And so you can feel
No,
free
the link
to,
is not working. It's not working.
you're not able to access it?
Is anyone able to access it?
It's not working for me either. The second one sent out wasn't working. Or neither one. It doesn't cut and paste either. Or it's not allowing me to cut and paste. And it says open link, but it doesn't go anywhere.
It opens, but you can't do anything with it.
I'm able to see the, I'm actually able to see, I just clicked on it. Did people try the second one that Lindsay put into the chat?
Yeah, I tried the second one.
I did as well. It wasn't working.
Yeah, Lindsay put in, and then the first one, I think it was from Lindsay as well. Or I think they're all from Lindsay, aren't they?
Yeah,
Yes.
but the last link should be the one that works more.
Lindsay, maybe try putting the last link in there. I was able to open up the last link.
Could you input though?
Also, Husain just made it a bit.ly, so that might work too.
Oh, my
Hello.
battery, oh God, my battery's getting low. Oh, this is not good.
I used the second link and it worked.
Okay, so maybe people can use,
The second link, okay,
The one that was posted at 6:33, I was able to just copy and paste it and it went right to the survey and
okay.
the post test.
The one at,
It was posted after Sharon posted, clicking on the link, it's not working. Then Lindsay posted, try this link.
this
And
is,
I
I'm not-
highlighted it.
I'm not
The time-
seeing that one. I am seeing, thank you both you, Mike. I don't think the question, and then the post test was to you, that one from Lindsay? Is that the first one?
No, it's the second one. Lindsay posted it and then Sharon made a comment afterward, clicking on the link is not working.
This link, try this link. If that one does not work, that one?
Yes, try that one.
Okay,
I highlighted it and it took me right to the survey.
I'm in the survey, but
Yep, so once you complete the survey, you'll then go to the post test.
I'm in the evaluation, I should say.
Perfect. It
That's,
should be
yep.
good.
Yes,
But
you're
that's
right.
correct. That's
But-
correct, yes. It sounds
But
like
I'm-
you,
I'm trying to put in my information, like my email and respond to the evaluation, but it's not allowing me to put my email address in. Oh, wait, I spoke. Oh, it looks like it is. Oh, crazy.
Technology.
it
Okay,
can be a bit cumbersome sometimes.
yeah, please no.
Right. Thanks, everyone.
Okay,
Okay,
is
so
everyone
let
got
me-
that link? Okay, so
I'm just gonna fill out the evaluation, right?
And then it will
Yes,
go
that's
to a
correct.
post test.
Oh, the post test. Will it stay up to allow me to do this if you
Yes.
go off the Zoom?
It will.
Okay.
Thanks, y'all.
I'm trying to get through it, but did you try to copy it or cut and paste it or just go through the thing? Strongly suggest expectations. Oh.
So I think that if you're able to complete the evaluation, you'll go right to the test, right?
Yes. If you
Okay.
go through the evaluation, it goes right to the test.
That's
I
right.
hope you don't need a passing grade.
It tells you,
Hopefully
right?
you'll get an A plus, right?
There's a lot of information that was shared.
So once
Um,
you finish the test, I'm trying to finish it so I can go to the next.
but the,
Okay, respond, my.
so I actually don't think you need to be on the Zoom to complete this. So if it's okay with everybody, we're going to start removing people. Not that we don't want to stay with you, but we do have to sort of conclude the meeting. So feel free to remove yourself, or we can help you to leave if you need some help.
Okay. How will you do that?
We can take you out of the meeting.
Oh, let me see if I can get to the post test.
You'll be able to get to the post test.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Have a nice evening.
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna continue to try to answer the post test
How
here.
to get out of it.
It's a lot of questions.
Okay. That only took 10 minutes.